Chapter 2. I inhaled the bracing air, so fresh yet hollow without a trace of spice. As the clouds started through the sky, I stumbled, grabbing Pinger's arm. How eerie the night was without the lantern's glow. Only this morning, fear had been a foreign emotion to me, and now I was choked with it. Fortunately, the cloud's dewy folds did not give way beneath my feet, but was as firm as the ground, if not for the surging wind all around. It would be a long journey to the southern sea, beyond the celestial kingdom, past the lush forests of the Phoenix kingdom, farther than the golden desert even, the vast crescent of barren sand that bordered the feared demon realm. How would I ever find my way home? It struck me then, perhaps, they did not think I ever would. A sea of lights glimmered in the distance, drawing me from my bleak thoughts. The celestial kingdom, Pinger whispered. As a sudden gust sprang up, she glanced over her shoulder, the color draining from her face. I whirled, my gaze probing the night. A large cloud soared toward us, the shadowy forms of 6 immortals upon it. Their armor gleamed white and gold, although their features were obscured by the dark. "Soldiers," Pinger gasped. My heart hammered. "Are they searching for us?" She pulled me behind her. "They wear celestial armor. They must be here at the Empress's command. Stay down. Hide. I'll try to outrun them." I pressed myself down as flat as I could, burying myself in the cool tendrils of the cloud. Part of me was glad to not see the soldiers, and yet my skin crawled with the dread of unknown. Ping-Er's eyes were closed as a thin stream of light shot from her palm. Until tonight, I had never seen her use magic. Perhaps there had been no need for it before. Our cloud dashed onward, but all too soon it slowed again. Sweat beaded her skin. "I can't make it go faster. I'm not strong enough. If they catch us, they'll discover who we are." "Are they near?" I twisted to peer behind, wishing I had not. Steel glinted from the soldiers' hands, drawing ever closer. Soon they would overtake us. Someone might recognize Ping-Er. Questions would be asked. I was a clumsy liar, without the practice which welled from need. One stern look from my mother was enough to spill the truth from my tongue. Monstrous visions crowded my mind, of soldiers storming through my home, dragging my mother away in chains. A crackling whip of lightning lashed across her back, splitting her skin as blood splattered the white silk of her robe. A gagged hot bile rising in my throat. My nails dug into the flesh of my palm. I could not let them catch us. I could not let my mother and Pingar be hurt. But weak as I was, there was only one thing I could think of, which might very well be the last thing I ever did. Gritting my teeth until they ached, I forced the words out. "Ping-Er, set me down here." She stared at me as though I had lost my mind. "No, this is the Celestial Kingdom. We must reach the Southern Sea. We must—" My calm shattered. I tugged her arm with frantic strength, pulling her down. "We can't outrun them. Once they capture us, they'll punish us all. I think we should split up. You must stay on the cloud. I can't control it. Pinger, at least this way we have a chance." What choice did we have? None which might give us both a hope of escaping. Yet, try as I might, I could not stop myself from trembling. She shook her head, but I pressed on. "I'll be safe in the Celestial Kingdom as long as they don't recognize who I am. I promised Mother I wouldn't tell anyone, and I won't. I'll find some place to hide. Maybe you can outrun the soldiers without me?" My words fell out in a rush. In a moment it would be too late, the decision wrenched from us. Fire blazed through the night, streaking toward us. It struck, our cloud shuddering as it swerved sharply. Heat flashed over my skin as Ping-Er raised her hand, gleaming with light which extinguished the flames. With a cry, she fell beside me. "They're attacking," she said in disbelief, even as she pressed her glowing palms into the cloud, speeding it along. Terror gripped me, but I could not succumb, not now when every second mattered. "Ping-Er, it's the only way. We can't let them catch us." I spoke firmly, urgently, no longer a child pleading to be heard. "This is my choice, too." Something hardened over her face then, a grim determination. She pointed to a thick cloud bank in the distance. "Over there. I'll drop down as low as I can. I'll shield you from the fall." Despite her reassuring words, something unsettled me. Her breathing came harsh and labored. Her skin was damp to my touch. Was she sick? Impossible. Immortals do not suffer such ailments. "Ping-Er, Are you hurt? Did the fire? Just a little tired. Nothing to worry yourself over. I rolled on my side, peering over the edge as the cloud hurtled on. My mind leapt to the perils ahead, beyond the emptiness beneath, to the glittering lights weaving across the darkness. Beautiful. Terrifying. Scrambling up, I threw my arms around Ping Er, hugging her tight, wishing I did not have to let go, wishing for so many things, none of which would ever come to pass. She clutched me with a raw desperation as we dove into the cloud bank. Droplets of icy water brushed my skin, the moisture clinging to my clothes. As we plunged lower, the chill bit deep, right into my bones. My legs quivered as I uncoiled them to stand. Ping Er's skin was like ash gone cold as she wrapped an arm around my shoulder. The air shimmered as a feathery tingle glided over me. The shield will cushion your fall, but you might still feel pain, and you must be careful at all times. Her hands shook as she slung my small bag over my arm. Will you try to return once the danger passes? I clung to this frail hope, trying to gather the scraps of my courage, trying not to fall apart. Tears pulled in her eyes. Of course. But if I don't, I'll find my way back one day when it's safe to, I said quickly to assure us both. You will. You must, for your mother. She drew a sharp breath. Are you ready? I was wound so tight I thought I might snap. No, I would never be ready. To leap into this unknown, to sever this final cord to my home. But if I didn't leave now, if I yielded to my clawing panic, if I let myself sink into the shadow of doubt, what little resolve remained would vanish. Facing her, I forced my stiff legs to take a step back to the edge. I would rather see her 100 times over than the gaping hollow below. Now, she cried out in a sudden burst of strength, her eyes blazing. My legs staggered back, just as Ping Er's head rolled to the side and she collapsed into a crumpled heap upon the cloud. But I was falling, too, through the black void of the sky. The wind struck all thought from me, swallowing the cry that erupted from my throat, whipping my face and limbs until they were raw. My clothes sucked forward in a cloud of silk. I could not breathe through the air slamming against me, my lungs afire. A roaring in my ears blocked out everything except my pounding heart. Yet ahead of me, shrinking it to a speck, was Ping Er's cloud gone still. Her body was huddled where she had fallen. Had she fainted? Move! I screamed in a soundless cry as the soldiers raced toward her. Terror shivered my insides as I stretched out my hands, a futile gesture, grasping wildly at something within me. My skin tingled hot then cold as a glittering surge of air hurtled across the emptiness towards Ping Er's cloud. It shimmered brightly before bolting away, vanishing into a distant horizon. I crashed into the ground, pain erupting across my body. The air knocked from my chest. I could only lie there as tears flowed from my eyes, mingling with the sweat that slicked my skin. A weariness gripped me. As my fingers grasped soft grass beneath me, I drew a trembling breath, the scent of flowers filling my nostrils. Sweet, yet I was numb to it. Pressing my palms to the ground, I pushed myself up, sore and aching, but otherwise unharmed. Ping Er's enchantment had shielded me from the worst of the fall. I thought I was saving her, but she had helped me get away, careless of her own safety. Had she escaped? Was my mother safe? Was I? My breaths came short and fast. I was drowning, struggling for air. Immortals did not suffer from illness or old age, but we could still be hurt by the weapons, creatures, and magic of our realm. Fool that I was, I never imagined such dangers would touch us. And now, I curled into a tight ball, arms wrapped around my knees, a thin, keening wail slipping from me like that of a wounded animal. Stupid, I cursed myself again and again for bringing this upon us, until at last I clamped my lips shut to muffle the sounds. I did not know how long I lay there, my throat racked raw with swallowed grief, and yes, I feared for myself too, as thoughts of cruel soldiers and vicious beasts crowded my mind. Who knew what lurked in the dark? I was unraveling, a tangled wreck, but then a beam of light fell across me. Lifting my head, I had stared at the moon, the first time I had seen it from afar, beautiful and luminous and comforting too. I breathed easier, finding solace in the thought that as long as the moon rose each night, I would know my mother had lit the lanterns and was well. A memory crept into my mind of her walking through the forest, her white robe gleaming in the dark, my bruised heart cramped with longing, but I steeled myself against the sinking into the abyss of self-pity again. Bright flickers from below caught my eye, shimmering lights dancing within their inky depths. Were these the ones I had glimpsed from above? Only then did I realize the ground was like a mirror, a reflection of the stars weaving across the night. Their unfamiliar beauty seared me, a stark reminder that I was no longer home. I slumped back down, clasping my arms across my body, staring at the moon until my pain subsided and I finally fell into a dreamless sleep on the cold, hard ground. Someone was patting my arm. Was it my mother? Had all this been a terrible dream? Hope flared, shattering the haze of slumber. My eyes opened, blinking the brightness of day. The swirling lights had vanished, and reflected in their place were the rosy clouds of dawn. A woman crouched beside me, a basket by her side. Her hand, which rested on my elbow, was as warm and dry as the surface of a paper lantern. "Why are you sleeping here?" she frowned. "Are you all right?" I lurched up, suppressing a gasp from the ache in my back. I could barely manage a nod to her question, numb from the memories which crashed over me. "Be careful here. You should go home. I heard there was some disturbance last night, and soldiers are patrolling the area." She picked up her basket, rising to her feet. My insides nodded. Disturbance? Soldiers? "Wait!" I cried, unsure of what to say, yet not wanting to be left alone. "What happened?" "Some creatures broke through the wards. The guards gave chase." She shuddered. "We've had fox spirits in recent years, though I heard this might have been a demon trying to snatch celestial children for their evil arts." One of those monsters from the demon realm? It hit me then that it was I the guards were searching for, that I was the supposed demon. I would have laughed aloud had I not been stricken with fear. Pinger must not have been aware of the wards. "Did they catch anyone?" My voice came out feeble and thin. "Not yet, but don't worry. Our soldiers are the finest in the realm. They'll capture the intruder in no time." She gave me a reassuring smile before asking, "What are you doing here at this hour?" I sagged with relief. Pinger had gotten away. Yet I must have lain here for hours and she had not come back. That gale which had burst through the skies, sending her soaring away, did it take her too far? A thought nudged me. Had that power, somehow, come from me? Could I do such a thing again? No, how ridiculous to think so. Besides, nothing good had come from my magic so far. I started, realizing the woman was staring at me. Her earlier question left unanswered. She did not suspect me because she expected some fearsome beast or fiend, but I dare not give her any reason to doubt me now. "I have nowhere to go. I was dismissed from the household I worked in. I fell and fainted." My words were clumsy, my tone halting, my tongue unused to uttering such brazen lies. Her face softened. Perhaps she sensed my misery, spilling from me like a river swollen with rain. By the four seas, some of those nobles are so ill-tempered and selfish. There now, it isn't so bad. You'll find another place. She cocked her head to one side. "I work at the Golden Lotus Mansion. I hear the young mistress is looking for another attendant if you're in need of a position." Her kindness was a warmth in the winter of my misery. My mind raced. Wandering alone by myself would surely arouse suspicion. I wasn't sure how I could think of such mundane things, but something hardened inside me. Grief was a luxury I could ill afford after wallowing in it half a night. I fell apart now. It would all have been for nothing. I would find a place here, and somehow I would make my way home, whether it took me a year, a decade, or a century. "Thank you. I'm grateful for your kindness." I bent from my waist in a graceless bow, as we never stood on such ceremony at home. It seemed to please her as she smiled, motioning for me to follow her. We walked the rest of the way in silence, past a grove of bamboo trees and across the gray stone bridge that arched over a river before arriving at the gates of a large estate. A black lacquered plaque was displayed just below the roof of the entrance, gilded with the characters, "Golden Lotus Mansion." It was a sprawling estate, a cluster of interlinked halls and spacious courtyards. Red columns held up curved roofs of midnight blue tiles. Lotus flowers floated upon the ponds, their fragrance heady and sweet. I followed the woman through the long corridors lit by rosewood lanterns until we reached a large building. Leaving me by the doorway, she approached a ruddy-faced man and spoke to him. He nodded once before coming toward me. I stood straighter, instinctively smoothing out the creases in my robe. "Ah, this is well timed," he exclaimed. "Our young mistress, Lady Mei Ling, admonished me just last night for not having found her a replacement. Although one wonders why she can't make do with 3 attendants," he muttered as he fixed me with an appraising stare. "Have you served in a large household before? What are your skills?" I swallowed hard, thinking of my home. I had not been idle, helping out wherever I could. "Not as large as this one," I finally ventured. "I would be grateful for any position you can offer. I can cook, clean, play music, and read." My skills were far from impressive, but my answer seemed to satisfy him. The next few days were spent learning my tasks, from how to brew Lady Mei Ling's tea to her liking, to preparing her favorite almond cakes, and caring for her garments, some adorned with such exquisite embroideries they seemed to quiver beneath my touch. Other duties included polishing the furniture, washing the bedding, and tending to the gardens. I was kept on my feet from dawn till night, maybe because I had no powers to speak of that might have eased my chores. It was the rules here which chafed more than the labor, dictating the depth of my bows, requiring me to hold my tongue until spoken to never sit in my mistress's presence, to obey her every command without hesitation. Each rule ground my pride a little more into the dirt, widening the gulf between mistress and servant, a constant reminder of the inferiority of my position and the fact I was no longer home. These might have stung more, yet my heart was already leaden with grief, my mind sunken with worries far greater than aching feet or palms scraped raw. And anyway, I was glad my days were crammed even with such drudgery, leaving me little time to dwell on my misery. When the chief steward finally deemed my performance satisfactory, I was assigned to Lady Mei Ling, along with her other attendants, with whom I would be sharing a room. She was supposedly a demanding mistress, but I hoped among the 4 of us we might suffice. When I arrived with my bag, the other attendants were getting dressed, slipping on willow-green robes over their white inner garments. One of the girls helped another tie a yellow sash around her waist. A pretty girl with dimples slid a brass lotus-shaped hairpin into her hair, which all of us were required to wear. They were a lively trio, chattering among themselves with easy familiarity. Despite the misery that weighed on me, a spark kindled in my chest. Perhaps I finally had an opportunity to make friends I had long wished for. The girl with the dimples swung toward me. "Are you the new girl? Where are you from?" I... I... The story Ping Er had helped me concoct flew out of my head. Under the weight of their stare, heat rushed into my cheeks. The others giggled, their eyes gleaming as rain washed pebbles. "Jia Yi," one of them called to the girl with the lotus pin. "She seems to have lost her voice." Jia Yi's stare racked me, her mouth curling as though seeing something which displeased her. Was it my plain hairstyle, or the lack of ornaments dangling from my wrist, waist, and neck? Or was it that I lacked her poise, her assurance of her place in this world? All of which heralded the simple truth that I was an outsider, that I did not belong. "What do your parents do?" "My father is the chief guard here," she declared with a distinct air of superiority. "My father slew the suns. My mother lights the moon." That would wipe the smug expression from her face, yet I stifled the reckless impulse. A moment's satisfaction was not worth being branded a liar or thrown into a cell, not to mention the danger to my mother and Pinger if they believed me. "I have no family here," I said instead, a safe answer, though one which would earn me more of their contempt. I could already see it in the looks they exchanged. Now they knew I had no one to protect me. "How dull. Where did the steward find you? Off the street?" Jia Yi sniffed, turning away. One by one the rest followed suit, talking among themselves once more as gaily as a flock of birds. Ice glazed the pit of my stomach. I was not sure what they expected of me, only that, somehow, I had been found lacking, unworthy. I walked woodenly to the far corner and lifted my bag onto the empty bed. The girls laughed, sharing a joke amongst themselves, their merriment driving the sting of my isolation deeper. As a lump formed in my throat, I hurried outside to gather my composure. I hated running away, but I would hate more crying in front of them. Save your tears for something which matters, I told myself fiercely before returning to the room. They swung to me at once, the sudden silence jarring. Only then did I notice my cloth bag was unknotted, its contents strewn across the floor. The air was thick with hostility as I crawled around to retrieve my possessions. Someone snickered, my ears burning at the sound. Childish, petty, I seethed. But oh, how the humiliation seared! How privileged I had been to have only known love and affection until now. In my childhood, I had been terrified of the vicious monsters I read about in my books. Yet I was learning that as much to be feared was the scythe-like smile and words that cut deep. Never had I imagined people like this existed, those who took pride in treading on the dignity of another, those who thrived on the misery of others. A small voice inside me whispered that I was indeed picked off the street, with no skills or connections to speak of. Perhaps if I held my tongue and kept my head down, they might eventually accept me as one of them. I was so tired, I just wanted to let things be. What did it matter if they won? Who cared for dignity or honor? It was nothing compared to all I had lost, but something within me cried out in protest. No, they would not shame me. I would not pander or flatter to gain their friendship. I would rather be alone than have friends as these, and though I felt lesser than an insect in this moment, I raised my chin to meet their stares. Scorn was stamped across Jia Yi's features, yet there was unease, too, in the way her eyes flicked away. Did she expect me to slink aside and fade into the shadows? I was glad to have disappointed her. They had wounded me, but they would not have the satisfaction of knowing it. Their unkindness only had as much power as I gave it, and I would wrench back my tattered pride from beneath the soles of their feet because it was all I had left.